So it's gonna change like how this all reads. Like once I get more of this vine work behind here, that magenta is gonna stand out more. Because right now it just like disappears. So I'm really gonna try to bring that out a little bit more. I've kind of been identifying as an artist since I can remember. It's always been a part of trying to figure out how this human experience works. So creation is not so much like inspiration for me. It's more of an act of processing. So it's processing my existence, it's processing sometimes trauma, sometimes just joy. It just really depends. And a lot of my work through the years, especially now, has really been about how to take the things I experience as a human being and explore them in different ways. Hey, I'm Krista Jones. I also go by Jonesy. I'm a muralist and fine artist based out of Atlanta, and I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. I am going to be creating about a 1,500 square foot mural for Art on the Beltline, and it will be off of Glenwood Avenue. It's the retaining wall right in front of Argos. It's a cement kind of factory, which is exciting to me because I used to live in that neighborhood so a long time ago. So it's nice to be able to revisit. And I'm in a different place in my life now, in a much different place in my life than I used to be when I lived there. And so it's really empowering to know that I'm doing this work and I get to be out there creating something beautiful. Yeah, so the mural's name is PASSERINE, and what that is a passerine is a blackbird. And this one at the end is actually a, hi crows! Is actually a red-winged blackbird. Of course, it's got like an orange-ish, pink color to its wing, but still, that's what it's derived from. But this is actually supposed to be like kind of like a visual translation of its song because it's a songbird. So it's a song. I think it's a lot of times it's about how you identify yourself. You know, those words that we say after I am are so important. The first time I actually owned the word I'm a muralist was in 2016. I had just been back to Atlanta, cleaned up my life, started fresh here, and about a year after working in a design job, because that's where my background is, I was like, ugh, you know, this is making me miserable again. And so I had the opportunity at the time to quit my job. And so I dove in not knowing what on earth I was going to do, how I was going to be sustainable. And I was living in Decatur, downtown Decatur at the time, and I kept seeing, I would walk around and I kept seeing these little utility boxes that were painted. And there was a project that had just started. And I loved the way they looked, and I was like, I wonder how I can get in with that. So I basically somehow figured out who was heading it up. I went down some rabbit holes and figured it out and got in touch with them. And they were like, well, we've already taken all the submissions and everything. You know, he's like, I might have an extra one. And so I did that first project, just got my own paint. But after I finished that utility box, I was like, I'm gonna start calling myself a muralist. And I did. And from then on, everything got bigger and bigger. It's not extremely tall, but it's 15 feet at one end and about 9 feet at the other end. Yeah. So it's not a small wall. My murals are vibrant and bright, a lot of pattern stuff happening. I do a lot of research. There's a lot of thought that goes behind, you know, the colors I'm choosing, the imagery I'm choosing, especially in this new body of work that I'm working on. You see a lot of my graphic design influence stuff in my murals, and more of my, I think, photography in my canvas paintings. My canvas work is actually really a lot more introspective, and a lot of times it gets a little dark. I'm intentionally working with a lot of color, but in a very soft kind of way. I was working with very limited color palette for a while, and I think that just, each time I delve into something new, it just allows me to kind of explore myself and the world a little bit better. I often work with non-human
focus subjects, so you'll see a lot of avian themed stuff in my work, including the ones behind me right now. It is not about birds, even though there are a lot of birds that show up in my work. I use the imagery of birds often to kind of like work through human behavior without having, you know, the human face there, because I think we connect to that so much. It makes it hard to open it up to a wider audience.
I also, you know, I get like all the paint on, so this wall will be covered, and then like the final few days will be just touch up. So it'll be going in and cleaning up lines and making sure these points like come together right.
It wasn't even on my radar that I would be really working as a full-time artist. It is a lot of work to be a full-time artist, and most of it's not creative, you know, and so that's the interesting thing about it. But I think it's problem solving, and I really think of myself more as a problem solver than anything. On this particular project, I didn't have a lift, and it would have been a lot easier to get really clean lines up high with like a scissor lift or scaffolding, but I've been doing all this with brush and rollers, so, you know, the whole mural was like, you know, a roller to trace things on. I was working with my friend, and we were at a school actually working on a mural. I saw this mother and a daughter like walk up, and she like yanked on her mom's hand and was like, "Hey mom, I want to be like her. I want to do that when I grow up." And I just kind of stopped and was like, "That's awesome. You can totally do this when you grow up." And I thought like how different my life might have been. I mean, I felt like an artist, but to actually be doing it like for a living. When I came out of school, society and whatever else was in my head saying, well, you know, in order to make a living, you're gonna have to be a graphic designer. It took me a while to figure out that that this is possible, that it is possible. If I can be out there doing this kind of work and some kid sees that it's possible, that's awesome. Hell, if, you know, like some adult sees it's possible, that's awesome too, so. After I do a mural, like the first big one I ever did, like when I got done, I kind of had this moment where I was like, all right, this doesn't belong to me anymore, you know? And so it's sort of a practice in impermanence. There's a beauty in learning how to not be so attached to the things that we create. Murals are seen by so many people, and my main purpose is to offer joy. Like, I want somebody to, you know, randomly like come across a mural, maybe in an unexpected place, and something about the color or the movement of the piece, just even if it's for a glimpse, offers some joy. I usually draw a heart on the wall before I actually paint the murals. So sometimes it's under the primer, sometimes it'll be under a color. But in this particular mural, I actually have a little heart that shows up. And it's just kind of my way to share my love with the world around me. So.